Bucky with Top Dollar Home Offer. We buy houses now, Tulsa, around the surrounding areas. I wanted to talk to you today about real estate cash flow and what that means. A lot of people get into the real estate industry, or they're curious about real estate, and you start hearing this word cash flow and you don't understand what it means. And we're going to break that down today so you guys got a good understanding of what cash flow is and why it's so important to your business and why it's so important to us when we buy houses. So first off, when we go out and look at a property, we have to analyze a number of different things. One of the things that we do is we try to decide which bucket this property should fall into. I get this question asked all the time. Do you keep this property? Do you sell the property? Do you fix the property up? What do you do with it? So it's important to understand how we determine that and the process that we go through to determine if this is going to be a property we're going to put into our portfolio as rental properties, which that's where the cash flow part comes in, or is this a property that we would look to fix and flip? And it all depends on certain circumstances. So we really have like 4 different buckets we look at properties when we go out and buy them. Okay, when we're evaluating your property, when we're making you an offer on your property, we want to determine which bucket they go into in order to give you top dollar for your home. So first off, let's talk about cash flow and what that means. So cash flow is when you buy a piece of property and then you rent it out, or it generates income for you in some manner that's greater than your expenses that goes out the door. So in other words, if you have a property that costs you $500 a month with your expenses, all those expenses that go into that, and we can talk about those here in a minute as well, and you receive income from that property greater than $500, that's your cash flow amount. Okay, so let's say you had a property that cost you $500 a month for the mortgage, the insurance, the taxes, the money you put back for repairs. That equals $500 a month. Sometimes there's management fees, depending on the number of portfolio of properties you have, you may add that in there. So you want to calculate all your detailed expenses, and then if you're receiving $600 a month in income from that property, you have $100 a month in cash flow. That's $1,200 a year that you would receive from that property. And there's also other write-offs that you can receive by talking to your accountant on ways you can deduct expenses for that rental property. So that's the high level of what cash flow is. So let's go a little bit deeper in breaking that down into the numbers that determine that $500. Okay? So when you go out and you buy a property, there could be down payment money that goes into that. So you want to factor all those things in when you're evaluating property that you're going to buy. That's what we do. So if it takes $20,000 to buy this property with a down payment, acquire the property, if we're going to do a traditional loan, it depends where we're at. If we're tying this property up with cash reserves, that's an expense. So we have a detailed formula that we plug in all these different factors. So we look at the location of the property. We look at the appreciation of the property. We look at the high costly repair items that are inside that property. When will we have to put a roof on this property? When does it need a new heat and air unit? So if you look at those costly items, you want to bake that into your evaluation. So we throw every property in through a risk analysis when we're putting in those buckets. When we determine it's the right property to keep long term, meaning that we're going to put a tenant in there, or we're going to lease this property back, whatever that may be, we're looking at what's the long-term cost that we're going to incur on this property. Are we going to have a repair bill within the first year, or 2 years, or 3 years? And we want to bake that into our cost that we look at when we're trying to generate the cash flow on that property. So if we know a new roof is going to cost us $5,000 in the next 5 years, we'll divide 5,000 by 60, and we'll tack that onto our monthly expenses for that property. Okay. So there's many different ways to look at this. If you like numbers, it's a great way to evaluate everything. So that way, 5 years from now, you're not hit with a $5,000 bill in that property because you forgot to put money back for repairs and expenses. Now, with anything, there's always unheard of expenses that pop up. Sometimes there's sewer problems, sometimes there's bad tenants. All those things go into factors. So if you can level out an expense cost for those unforeseen expenses, then you can bake those in there. So the idea behind this is to be able to budget what this property is going to cost for you for the length of time that you're planning on owning it, looking at the appreciation for that property, what your end goal is for that property. Are you going to lease it for 5 years and then sell it? Are you going to keep it for 20 years and use it as one of your portfolios properties to retire on, if you're going to retire, or whatever you want to call it? The idea here is to determine which bucket that fits inside keeping a property. Because there's a lot of rental properties you may keep for a number of years to pay down and increase the equity in it, and then in order to resell it again. So there's many options. That's the cool thing about real estate, is when we buy houses, every property has a different scenario we could go after, right? We could buy this property to fix it up and flip. We could buy this property to keep and hold. We could buy this property for one of our investors that's looking to increase their cash flow. And we determine all those different factors when we're buying property. So when we buy houses across Tulsa and the metro, we look for a number of different things, but cash flow is king. Now, with the election year coming up next year, we're also looking at keeping cash reserves, right? We're hearing this across the different markets across the country that real estate may be slowing down. And when it slows down, or even when it kind of crashes, it's a great time to buy more real estate, right? That's the beauty of real estate. It's been consistently growing in appreciation over the years, even from the big downfall in 2008, 2009, when the housing market crashed. I mean, we've had properties that went from $350,000 down to $200,000, like overnight. And it's scary, but if you're in a position to keep that property long term, you'll be ahead of the game. So not worry about it. So when you buy the property, that's when you make money in real estate. So you have to make sure that when you're buying houses, or if you're wanting to get into real estate, you want to understand what is your end goal of that property and how does it fit into your long-term plan or short-term plan, and which bucket it should go into. That's what we have to determine when we come out and we make you a top dollar home offer. We want to make sure it fits in the right bucket and gives you the best options to get the most money out of your property. We look forward to speaking with you. If you would like to find out more about us buying your house, or if you're just a curious investor and would like to ask us some questions, we're considering doing an internship over the next 3 months for the fall quarter. If you're interested in that, shoot us over a message, and we would be happy to discuss with you what your goals are, and we could help you get started on the right foot there. So we thank you very much. I hope you learned a little bit about cash flow. To recap that means looking at all expenses that goes into maintaining, holding, and keeping that property. And that includes everything from future repairs, that includes vacancy rate, whether you can keep a tenant in there. That also looks at the cost of the daily hold of the property. That's your long-term goal or short-term goal of the property. Any immediate fix-up, and how much cash it takes to tie up that property and purchase it. So we analyze all that. We determine what our cash flow needs to be and our return on our investment. That determines which bucket we put those into. So we thank you very much. Stay tuned for more videos about real estate. We look forward to speaking with you, because we buy houses across Tulsa, and we look forward to helping you with yours. Thank you.